Hey guys, I hope you're doing great. So I'm really sorry that this happened. I feel horrible, both because I'm sick and because I really wanted to come back to classes. Like I was so sick and tired of this online thing, and um, I somehow managed to escape getting sick for the last year and a half. But this weekend I had to go up to the mountains to see my family. And I guess I must have caught something because by Sunday night I was like, there's something wrong with me. And then I'm like, I hope it's just allergies of some sort. I don't know that I have any allergies. And then by Monday morning, it started to get worse. And then as the day progressed, I realized it was getting worse and worse. So now I'm so congested I can barely, I definitely cannot taste or smell anything. I don't think it's COVID. I mean, on the one hand, I've gotten the vaccine. On the other hand, I have a really runny nose, so that's not supposed to be one of its symptoms, but I don't know. Anyway, fingers crossed, I'm going to feel better. I'm trying to rest up as much as possible. I really would have loved to be in class today and to be introducing you guys in person to the class material, which is really exciting, but unfortunately, this is the way things have turned out. I guess the saying is when it rains, it pours. And really, in Lebanon, it's been pouring for so long, I don't think I remember what it was like without any of this pouring rain. Anyway, so look, because I'm getting exhausted really quickly as I'm preparing these, as I'm speaking, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by going through the content of the course and not the technical parts of the syllabus. If I have the energy to go through the technical parts of the syllabus, I'll also do that. But if not, then hopefully on Thursday I'll be better. I'm really resting up, trying to do my best to just get over this. And yeah, okay, so without further ado. So guys, welcome to Metaphysics. Metaphysics is this really interesting course. It's about, I guess let me just start by saying, so metaphysics is one of the big branches of philosophy. In much the same way that in biology, one branch is microbiology, in business, one branch is advertising, in psychology, one part is social psychology. In philosophy, there's also branches, and one of the central branches of philosophy is metaphysics. Metaphysics means the study of reality or the study of what is or the study of being. So it's described in various ways. But basically, anytime you're asking a question that looks like, what is X, or what is X's nature, there you're asking a metaphysical question. So if I ask, what is the human? What is God? What is time? What is free will? All of these are metaphysical questions. And you can get a better sense of what metaphysics is by contrasting it with epistemology, which is another branch of philosophy. So epistemology is the study of what we can know or how we access reality. So when I ask, do humans have any knowledge? I'm asking, an epistemological question. I'm asking about the knowledge that we humans have. Now, metaphysics and epistemology intertwine in lots of ways, but it's important to keep these two separate. In a way, epistemology wouldn't be possible, and epistemological answers wouldn't exist if there were no knowers in the world, beings like us or possibly animals. By contrast, metaphysics, all of its answers, or at least many of its answers that have nothing to do with us, would continue to be whether or not we were there. So for instance, time doesn't, or at least, on one conception of time, time doesn't depend on us. So the fact that there are no humans to know anything about time, it doesn't tell you that there is no time, and doesn't tell you anything about the nature of time. Time is one thing, our knowledge of time is something else. God is one thing, our knowledge of God is something else. The external world is one thing, our knowledge of the external world is something else. So that's broadly metaphysics. Now, I'm going to keep in mind that as we proceed through this class, things will always start out sounding very abstract, and then they're going to become much more concrete. We're going to give lots of examples, so you don't have to, don't worry if you didn't follow all of that, is what I'm trying to say. Let me just kind of read the course catalog description. I don't think it's particularly helpful, but, it's the course catalog description, so we should go through it. I'll go through that and the course learning outcomes before actually jumping into the actual content of our course. So, metaphysics is the study of the basic structure of reality or being. Different topics that are covered in this course might be covered under the heading of this course. So some of these are the nature of personal identity, the nature of free will, the nature of time, the relation between our concepts and reality, the relation between the mind and the body, the relation between particulars and universals, and how we should understand modal concepts. So like I said, not super helpful because you guys probably don't know half of the terms that are being used here, but I'll get back to that. For the learning outcomes, there's 4 learning outcomes. At the end of this course, students, you guys, should be able to deal with some central metaphysical issues, such as those concerning the nature of space and time, the identity of persons, the existence of God, and the relations between universals and particulars. Now, we're not actually going to do all of these. For instance, we won't do anything about the nature of space, but hopefully we'll have a chance to talk a little bit about time. Actually, I don't know whether I have it in this version of the course. I'll come back to that. Okay, the second one is we're going to connect the contemporary issues to classical works in metaphysics. And also, to an extent, we're going to be doing that. I'll tell you a little bit about the historical background, but mostly I'm going to be sticking to the current time. However, I will draw connections to the past. Also apply deductive reasoning to the evaluation of these central metaphysical issues. So this is going to be a really core learning outcome. Deductive reasoning is the topic we're going to cover probably next time, hopefully when I'm in class. I'll say more about that then. And then describe the connections between metaphysics and language and the connection between metaphysical and scientific questions. And again, to an extent, we're going to do that. But probably we won't delve into it too deeply. One thing to just, I guess that's worth saying is that, metaphysics is really, it's a huge field. It's very dense. It's very old. It's one of the oldest branches of philosophy, so it's about 2,500 years old. So there's a ton to cover in a course on metaphysics. I could literally come up with 6 or 7 different courses that have no overlapping material, and they could all count as introduction to metaphysics. I've selected a selection for our class that I think is a good balance between telling you really what metaphysics is all about, but at the same time not overwhelming you with very abstract material, since many of you will be beginning students in philosophy. Okay. I just realized I don't have my earphones plugged in, so maybe the audio is not going to be great. I'm going to edit it, but let me go put my earphones on before I go over the course, the week-by-week cut-up of the course. Okay, guys. So I'm going to go into, I wanted to go over the course schedule, but honestly, it just occurred to me. You could see how I'm just not focused, like my head's not, with me. I'm so congested. I'm so congested. What I wanted to say is I kind of just jumped into the course without saying anything to you guys. So I just hope that you guys haven't been having too hard a time over the summer. And before that, I realized the situation is an absolute disaster. I feel sorry for the people. I feel sorry about what's happening, but also another part of me knows that the Lebanese chose this. They chose this by voting twice for very bad people, very, very bad people, criminals at best, if not much worse. Or they didn't vote at all, which is just as bad. It's unfortunate, but, I guess from one perspective one says, a person should get what they deserve. And in some sense, the Lebanese are getting what they deserve. They asked to be in this situation. They were put in their own trash in 2015, and they still voted for those people. And they were abused, and they were poor before that, and they still voted for the same people. and now it seems like, well, they're living the lives of slaves. We all are. I mean, I'm talking to you guys now, and I don't have electricity. I'll just upload this once I'm done. So, yeah, I do hope that you guys have not been too poorly affected, and I hope that you guys will consider, especially this year, there's going to be elections twice for the municipal and the parliamentary elections. I hope you take the voting seriously and convince your families to do so, because if they think that it can't get worse than this, and if you guys think it can't get worse than this, I assure you it can. It can, very, very, very much so. And maybe we'll unfortunately have to see this degradation even as the semester proceeds. In any case, I do hope that you guys have not suffered, well, at least suffered as minimally as possible. I find it very hard to imagine that anybody is entirely unaffected by the situation. Even if you yourself are well off, it can't be very pleasant to see so many people suffering. Okay, I just wanted to say that. Let's jump back into the course. Look, this is a tentative schedule. This means that I'm not trying to, I don't insist on us covering everything. What matters to me is that we cover things and we understand them and we cover them well. So if this means going faster or slower, then we'll just go faster or slower. If we don't cover everything, well, that's okay. We'll just try to cover the core things. And if we cover all of this and we have more time, then we can just add some additional stuff and cover that. Okay, you know, like I just said, you know, metaphysics is the study of reality or the study of its nature, of reality's nature. And the question is, which chunk of reality? You know, there's the reality, you know, of persons. That's, you know, one chunk of reality. Another chunk of reality is art, you know, that's another, you know, a chunk of reality. Mathematics, that's another chunk of reality. So there's different parts of reality. And all of these have their own corresponding metaphysical questions. So I can ask, what is the nature of a person? And that's a metaphysical question about persons. I can also ask, what is the nature of art? That's a metaphysical question about art. I could ask, what is the metaphysical nature of numbers? That's a metaphysical question about mathematical reality. Okay, so the way I've organized the course is that I thought, look, instead of just jumping into the very deep end, asking questions like what are numbers or, you know, what's time, I thought let's start by looking at the part of reality we're most familiar with, namely ourselves, being human. And we'll start with a series of questions on that. Specifically, we're going to start with 3 questions on that. Then, in the second part of the course, we'll abstract away from us specifically to talking about some very, very general aspects of reality. I mean, if you could think of it this way, the course could have been reversed. In some way, the material we're going to cover at the end is more proper metaphysics than the material we're going to cover at the very beginning. And it's more foundational. This is why I called it proper metaphysics. All of them are metaphysics, but some of them are more basic questions than others. But if I start with the most basic questions, I'm going to lose you guys so quickly because you're going to be like, this is so abstract, you know, I can't get a handle on it. So instead of doing that, I've kind of reversed these and I start with the questions that are a bit more, you know, like concrete and day-to-day, and maybe you've thought about them already, to those questions that probably have never occurred to you, or if they occurred to you, you didn't really know what to think about them. Let me go through this. Okay, so first we're going to begin by going over some formal logic. Logic is, as we're going to see, the tool that philosophers use to address all of the many different topics that philosophy addresses. So earlier I talked about epistemology and metaphysics, and you might think, Why are philosophers talking about what we know and also about the nature of reality? Why isn't there two disciplines that do this? And actually, philosophers do even more than that. They also talk about what's the right thing to do. They also talk about what's the nature of the mind, and they talk about, perception and imagination, and, AI and cognitive science. How are they talking about all of these things? Well, what unifies the philosophical treatment of all of these topics and what's the core of philosophy is logic. And so that's what we're going to begin with, hopefully on Thursday. Hopefully I'll be in class to give you guys that. So that's reading 1, and it's week 1 of the course. Then we're going to jump into our first topic, which is from weeks 2 to 5. And this is the topic of personal identity. So what's personal identity? Well, identity is when something is itself. Like when you say one is one, that's identity. You are yourself, that's identity. That's all identity means, When we talk about personal identity, we're talking about a specific type of identity. The identity that pertains to persons. That's why we call it personal identity. And so, let me just give you, in a way, all philosophical questions can be, or all philosophical issues, can be construed in terms of a puzzle that we can begin with. So just think about this. I can sit and talk to you, and you could tell me, Rami, last year I was a very different person. Or before COVID hit, I was an entirely different person. Before the, Beirut explosions, I was a completely different person. You could say that. And you would be speaking not inaccurately. You could really mean this. At the same time, you could pick up a photo from when you were like 3 years old, and you could tell me, hey Rami, that's me. Okay, but notice that there's something puzzling, because you're saying that 3-year-old is you, so you're identical to them. At the same time, you're telling me you were a different person just 1 or 2 years ago. So which is it? Are you the same person that you were when you were 3 years old and 2 years ago? Or are you a different person? And, how are we using this language? It seems like at the same time we sometimes say, I'm the same person, I'm always the same person. Ever since I was born, I've been the same person. On the other hand, you could think, I'm not really the same person, not the same person I was last year because I'm very different now. So which is it? That's the puzzle of personal identity. What we want to know is what makes you you at a time or across times. And we're going to look at a variety of answers. We're going to ask, well, when we say I, what does I refer to? Is I my body? Is I my mind? Is I the combination of my mind and my body? All of these are going to be questions we can, raise. But also we're going to wonder, what keeps me myself? Let me just try to make it a bit more concrete. Just imagine like a sci-fi scenario. Somebody pulls out a portal, a teleportation machine. Do you guys watch Rick and Morty? If you do watch Rick and Morty, this class will, we can use lots of examples from Rick and Morty for this class because they raise many metaphysical possibilities in their, in the animation. Rick and Morty, for those who don't know, so Rick is this guy, who's got like awesome technology, and then he has this portal gun, and he puts the portal gun, he opens up a portal, and they walk into this portal, and they come out somewhere else. Well, okay, but imagine that there was such a portal, and you walked into it. What guarantees to you that you're not, when you enter the portal, just dying, and then a duplicate is coming out on the other side, who is not ultimately you? In fact, what guarantees to Rick and Morty that that's not happening to them? Or, if you think that's too crazy, just think about another question that's relevant for personal identity. Many people believe that they have some sort of life after death. When they die, they're gonna, show up in heaven or hell or limbo or whatever, or maybe they are going to be reincarnated. Okay, but people have afterlife beliefs. They have beliefs about, after they die, something is gonna come, and that they're going to show up there potentially. Well, okay, let's put it this way, okay? How are you so sure that upon your death, so you die, and then God, gets this other guy who's you, or a girl. So I use guy, as a gender-neutral term, guys. So just when I say guys, I don't mean just the boys, okay? So say I die, and then Rami shows up in heaven. How do I know that Rami is me, not just a duplicate of me? Because it's not going to benefit me very much if that's just a guy who's very much like me. I want to be there, right? So, okay, say God is creating that magic formula that's going to give us life after death. What are the ingredients in that formula? In a way, that's the question we're asking. We're asking, what is it that makes us us at a time and across times? That's going to be our first topic. And you guys can probably see that it's a complex sounding topic, but we're going to dwell on these. So we're going to spend 3 weeks talking about this issue. By the time we end, you guys are going to be comfortable at least thinking about the basic positions, and you're also going to incline towards a position yourselves. Okay. Okay. So the next topic is related to the first topic. In fact, the way I've organized it, it's like some questions are going to pop up in the personal identity topic that we're going to feel like, oh, I need to know more about this other thing. And so that's what we're going to do next. We're going to know more about that other thing. This way we have a bigger and bigger picture, and kind of the picture adds up all the time. So between weeks 6 and 9, we're going to look at the relationship between the mind and the body. Now, I can't imagine that any of you have not thought about this question, about the relationship between the mind and the body. Probably many of you think that you have a mind and that you have a body. But as you're about to find out, or as you're going to find out in this class, this is a very, 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 very difficult question. In fact, it's a very difficult question because at least one of these terms, the mind, is something that we have no understanding of, a very, very, very poor understanding of. And I don't mean us philosophers, I mean humanity. Look, think of it this way. If we understood what a mind is, we could build one. And this means we would have robots walking around and talking to us. And this would be helpful because actually it would make us a little bit less lonely, since although there are other creatures around us, none of them speak. And so we would like it if we had some, intelligent life, whether we found it or we built it. We'd love that, but we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to build intelligent robots. Google is very smart in answering your basic questions, but you can't really have a meaningful conversation with it. In any case, we'll say a lot more about that. So as we're going to see in this discussion about the mind and the body, one of the core questions is, well, what's the relationship between them? The oldest position says that reality, or one of the classical positions says reality is basically made up of two types of stuff, mental stuff and physical stuff. And those are two separate sorts of stuff. And then these two sorts of stuff are combined in us, and they interact with one another. But as we're going to see, if these are totally different types of stuff, it's going to be very difficult to understand what it means to say that they interact with one another. Because typically interactions occur when two things share some properties in common. But if the mind and the body are totally different, then they don't share any properties in common, and so they can't be really interacting. This is a classical problem. It's called the mind-body problem, and was first introduced in the 17th century by René Descartes. In fact, he didn't see it as a problem. He thought he was answering it. There was this queen who had read his book, and she was the one who first gave this objection, as far as we know, but he didn't really respond to her. And actually that 200 or 300 years that followed were philosophers just trying to respond to this mind-body problem. That's, the introduction of that part of the class. In the second part of the class, we're going to look at the 20th century and what happened after that. As we're going to see, some physicians came to think that the mind-body problem is so difficult that actually we're wrong. There's either no minds or there are no bodies. And so, whereas the original position was called dualism, or the whole family of positions are called dualisms, later positions came to be monist, and so they accepted that reality is just made of one type of stuff. Some of them thought everything is mind, right? There isn't, there's no tables and chairs. There are experiences of tables and chairs. After all, have you ever experienced a table and chair that is not experienced? No. All tables and chairs are experienced tables and chairs. So this means that literally all of physics is kind of a confusion because it acts as if there's a reality out there that we're discovering. But actually physics is not about that reality out there that we're discovering. Physics is about the sequence of experiences that we humans have. Anyway, this position is called idealism, and don't worry too much. If this sounds to you like it's absolutely crazy, don't worry too much about it, because in some sense they are kind of crazy positions. But as I'm about to hopefully show you in this class, the problems are crazy problems, and they might need some crazy solutions. Okay, the other alternative, which is the more popular view in the 21st and the 20th century, so that idealism was very popular in the 19th century, is a view that's known as physicalism or materialism. And basically it says, no, actually there are no mental things, Remember those two types of stuff? Just as the idealist had said, all things are mind, the materialist or the physicalist says all things are matter. And so there's only the truths and the world of physics. Everything else, what we think of as our mind is actually a confusion. We don't really have minds. There are no minds. Minds are just some function that the physical performs, or they are just some physical things and so on. That might sound crazy to you as well. But, we're going to go through these in a lot of detail, so don't worry too much. And I'm going to connect all of these things to all of these issues that we, that occur, that are presented in, by our technological future, because a lot of these questions are going to take, imagine that we can upload ourselves into a computer. If we can upload ourselves into a computer, the question is, what would we need to upload? Is it our mind, or do we need to upload our body? And if we're going to build artificial intelligence, real intelligence, what do we need to duplicate in us? All of these questions are going to tie up with one another. So a lot of scientific questions tie up with a lot of these metaphysical questions. Okay. Moving on to a third topic, and that's going to take weeks 10 through 12. It's also going to be a topic that is raised by a lot of the issues that we brought up before it, and that's the problem of free will. Now, like the mind-body problem and the personal identity issue, probably you guys have thought about this. And the question is, also, you can pose it as a puzzle, okay? So when we think about ourselves, I think that right now I'm choosing to speak the words as I'm speaking them. I'm jumping around, between my, syllabus and telling you all about it. So it looks like these are my choices. I also chose not to come to class because I don't want to infect anyone. So given that I'm choosing all of this stuff, then obviously I'm free. Yeah, but am I free? Because after all, think about the way I look. I didn't really choose that, I had some parents, their DNA mixed in a particular way, and then that's what came out. The fact that I have the skin color, the fact, that my face looks this way, the fact that I'm the height that I am, the fact that I was born in this part of the world and I came to learn Arabic and English, the fact that I'm from a family that thinks this or thinks that, none of these were up to me. And now, if none of these things were up to me, then literally all of the basic, the foundations of my life are not in my control. And now I might wonder, were they ever in my control? After all, even for the first 10 years of my life, I just kind of went with the flow, I was put in a school, I learned whatever I learned, I made the friends that I made, and it was all because I was put in the school, which I had no control over. I had also no control over getting sick right now. So it looks like, maybe we are free, but it looks like there's a lot of things we're not free with respect to. So when philosophers talk about the problem of free will, they're not asking, are we fully free? They're asking, are we free even one little bit? Because, in fact, there are some good reasons to think that we might not be free altogether. At the same time, it seems kind of absurd to think that you're not free because, if you're not free, then you're literally not even showing up to watch this course, because you want to. It's just like you're a puppet of some sort. We're all puppets of some sort. So that's the problem of free will. And again, we're going to look at a variety of positions for this problem. We're going to look at two sorts of challenges to free will. There's one challenge that comes out of physics, okay? And so that's going to be one set of challenges. There's another challenge that comes out of the existence of God. So if God knows everything, and God, is all-powerful, all-knowing, and so on, then clearly God knows, right, what I'm gonna do tomorrow. And God knows whether you're gonna, right now, God knows whether you're gonna pass or fail the class. But if God knows that, then it looks like you have no choice in whether you're gonna pass or fail. You're just gonna do whatever God knows you're going to do. So we're gonna look at that challenge as well. If we have time, we'll look at a third one, which is based on logic, but we'll see. Okay, last topic, and that's good because I'm really just starting to collapse. Okay, so weeks 13 through 15, we're going to go through these three other topics that, as I call them, like really, really abstract metaphysical topics, and I'm going to do it relatively quickly by comparison to the other topics. We can't dwell on them too much because, well, first of all, we're going to be running out of time, but also those topics are really complicated, and I think that if we spend too much time on them, you guys are going to, they're just going to make you dizzy. That's what I'm going to say. So let me tell you what these topics are. The first topic is called constitution. Here's what constitution says, okay, or what the problem of constitution is. Basically, constitution is about the nature of wholes and parts. So remember, we said metaphysics is about the study of reality, and then there's chunks of reality. So we've looked at persons and their identity, that's one chunk of reality. We've looked at minds and bodies, that's another chunk of reality. We've looked at human freedom, that's another chunk of reality. Well, constitution is a chunk of reality, and it's that chunk of reality that is about parts and wholes. And that sounds very abstract, the relationship between a part and a whole, but this is what this topic of constitution is. Now, I'm just going to give you a quick example. Imagine you have a piece of clay, okay? Now, the piece of clay exists, and you sit there and you shape it, and you make a cat with it. Now, when you've shaped that piece of clay into a cat, the clay cat came into existence. And now, after a little bit, I destroy the cat, and the clay remains. Okay, what's the relationship between the cat and the clay? Is the cat the same as the clay? Well, it seems like they can't be the same, because the clay existed before the cat existed, and existed after the cat existed. So they can't be the same thing. I mean, if two things are born at different times, they can't be the same. Okay, but the cat depends on the clay, or something like that. That's the question of constitution. It's about parts and wholes. That's a constitution question. There's a lot of these sorts of questions, but don't worry too much if this sounds to you super abstract and near nonsensical. By that time in the class, you'll have a much better sense of how we might address an issue like this. Okay, then there's the topic of universals. So let me just tell you something that's kind of surprising. Most of the time we think that things exist at a particular space and a particular time. So for instance, I'm here right now, and I'm located here. I can't be also simultaneously at LAU right now. I also can't be in Japan right now or in outer space right now. If I'm in a place, I'm in that place at that time, and that excludes me being at other places at other times. Okay. But let's see. Hopefully, I could run this like this. Here's this mouse, okay? And this mouse, as you guys can see, is black. So black is here. At the same time, there's this mouse. And this mouse is also black. So black is also here. And indeed, black is fully here. So it's not like half black, it's full blackness, okay? And it's fully here. So blackness can be at two places, completely at two places at the same time. Similarly for the brownness in the painting, right? There's full brownness here, full brownness there. If any of you are wearing anything brown, there's full brownness there as well, okay? But obviously, it looks like brownness can exist at multiple places at the same time and can do so fully. So what's the difference between brownness and Rami? I mean, I can't be in two places fully at the same time, but brownness and blackness can. In general, the colors can. But it's not just the colors, These are what we call universals. Having the property of being 3 kilograms, okay, can exist everywhere in which that thing is 3 kilograms. So that property exists in all of those places. Philosophers have really been puzzled about what these things are, what properties are or what universals are. As we're going to see, the universals is one way of talking about these things, properties is another, but I'll say more about that as time goes by. So we're going to be in that, so we call them universals as opposed to particulars. We are particulars, but things like redness and blackness are what we call universals. So we'll discuss that topic. And then the final topic is about possibility and necessity. And it's also kind of a puzzling topic. So, look, it makes sense for you to say, Rami is at his home right now, and Rami is sick. But then your friend could say, yeah, but Rami could have been at LAU, and Rami could have not been sick. And that's true, right? Possibly, I could have not been sick, and possibly I could have been at LAU. Yeah, but now notice something that's kind of weird. Actually, let's give one more example. We could also say water is H2O. And in fact, necessarily, water is H2O. Anytime you have water, you're going to have H2O, right? That's just what water is. Okay, so notice that I started out by saying, Rami is here. Now, it's obvious how you would know that Rami is here. You know it because, you experience what is the case, right? What is the case is that I'm here and you're listening to me speak, etc., etc. But how do you know about what is possibly the case? When you say, I am here, but I could have not been here, you're saying possibly I wasn't here. But how do you know anything about what's possibly the case? After all, you experience what is actually the case. You don't experience what is possibly the case. Or do you? So what's possibility? At the same time, we talk about necessity. We say water is necessarily water is H2O. Yeah, but how do we know that water is necessarily H2O? How do we know anything about what's necessary? I mean, all we experience is what actually is. we don't experience what necessarily is. I mean, for it to necessarily be, I would have to have checked all of reality for that. But obviously I haven't, and no human has. So how do we know anything about necessity? And how do we know anything about possibility? And in general, what are these terms, possibility and necessity? So that's the last reading of the class, and as you guys probably can tell, unlike the first three topics, these topics seem super abstract, and it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around them, if at all you're convinced that there's an issue there. But hopefully, as time goes by, you guys will come to a better, a clearer understanding of what's going on in those cases. Okay, guys. So I won't go over the course material or the rest of the syllabus for now, because I'm exhausted and I'm still going to have to do one more of these things for my other class. But I just want to say, there's basically the important thing for you to know is that in this class you have to read. Okay, there's no option of not reading, because if you don't read, you're just not going to get anything. The readings are always going to be short. They're going to be like 10 pages at most per session, at most, okay? They're all going to be, I've picked them so that they're fun readings about interesting topics, so they shouldn't be too challenging, but that's really important to keep in mind. And then there's going to be 3 tests that will come in various forms, but I'll talk about that next time when I see you. Okay, well, I hope this was informative, guys, and again, I'm really sorry for having had to miss the session. Fingers crossed that on Thursday I'm going to be able to make it. I would love to be able to just show up and, also not be sitting with no electricity in my home. Okay, cheers, guys.